We have, at the moment, we have 9 parties in parliament. So we have a multi-party system. Altogether, we have, in Finland, you need to register a party in the party register, which the Ministry of Justice maintains. All in all, there are, as far as I recall, 17 parties in the party register, 17. But the parliamentary parties are 9 at the moment who are competing of seats, and we have everything from we have right-wing party, the center party, which is sort of more a rural party, and then we have the left-wing party and the Green Party. And as it seems at the moment, if we look at these elections, it seems possible that no party will actually exceed 20% of the votes. We have a very tight competition between 4 major parties, and they are all, let's say, between 15 and 20% of popular support. One thing about, of course, our party system, how it has developed, we have received our party system, the main basis of our party system stems from the time of Finnish independence, or even before that, as Finland was a Grand Duchy of Russia. But of course, there has been some new parties entering the government, like the Green Party, which has established itself as a big role since the 1980s, and then later on the True Finn Party. Let's say that the Finnish election system, the good thing about the Finnish election system is that it's very easy to understand, because you only vote, you only select a candidate from the party list and write down the number of the candidate. So it's very easy for people to understand how it works and how the votes are counted, and that's the good thing about the election system. The bad thing, I would say, that the cons about the system is that people do not necessarily understand when they vote for a candidate that the vote also goes to the political party. So sometimes you hear that people say that I like this particular candidate, but I don't like the party. But if the candidate doesn't get elected, the vote goes directly to the party, and some other person from the party list will be elected based on that vote. And this is something that sometimes is unclear for people, the role of or the difference between parties and candidates. As far as this issue has been concerned, we don't have at the moment any projects in changing our election system. We have sometimes made a few years ago investigations about going to a more fixed list system, but it didn't receive any success. And I think that we have such a long history of having the possibility to vote directly for a candidate on the party list that it would be very difficult to change. And one other good thing with the system of directly voting for a candidate on a party list and not on a fixed closed list made by the party is that anyone can have the possibility of being elected. It concerns women, it concerns minorities and so forth. In a closed list system, the party may want to have these candidates on the list because it looks sort of good from the equality perspective, but on the other hand they are put so much lower on the list that they actually have no real chance of getting elected. In Finland this risk is not there because every candidate received their personal votes, so in that sense anyone can get elected, and that makes it more equal for participation. I think that's a good feature of the system. One problem that we in Finland have with the election system is concerns the electoral districts, especially in eastern Finland and in the northern part of the country, the hidden threshold for getting elected is getting higher and higher, and the proportionality is not functioning as good as in the larger electoral districts. And I think this is one issue that we have, or this is one issue that we have investigated. Would it be possible to combine electoral district, because people move away from the northern part and the eastern part of the country, and these areas become more densely populated. But it's of course a difficult political issue, and so far we don't have any projects in doing that. But that's of course one thing about the election system. And then we have also made a very large investigation about introducing electronic voting in elections, like our neighboring country Estonia has done so successfully for over a decade. But now when we see a lot of more electoral interference occurring in the world, and we did have our best security experts in the working group, we didn't think it was worth, or we didn't think we could do it at the moment, because we, according to studies, have one of the most reliable election systems in the world. And even though nobody would, even if we would transfer the vote into an online system, even though nothing would happen, if people would imagine that their vote would be tempered, it would be much more difficult to actually recalculate the vote, so that the people who is not a dedicated engineer would understand what happens. Now we can calculate the votes on hand and anyone can see it, so it's transparent and working well. And secondly, we saw that in Estonia and in the countries that have on a local level or regional level introduced electronic voting, we didn't see any big boost in electoral participation, so that's not directly a cure to the problem either. The Finnish electoral system builds on like I said, we have a much more person-centered system where you vote directly on the candidate on the party list. Sweden has had in the past sort of a very closed list system where the parties put forward their candidate list. Now Sweden, of course, has during the recent decades modified their electoral system so that it's a flexible list where you also can make a personal choice on the candidate, but it's still a more a closed list or fixed list system than our system. That's the basic difference. And another issue that is different in Sweden is, of course, that they have all elections at the same time. They have parliamentary elections, regional elections, and municipal elections at the same time. And that is something we have had very big difficulties, is that too often reoccurring elections, because we elect a president, a parliament, members to the European Parliament, as well as members to the municipalities. And sometimes the election cycle has been very difficult, with 3 elections occurring the same year, and that's a problem for electoral participation as well, because if we have elections too often, the parties doesn't have money and energy to pursue electoral campaigning, and secondly, people get tired of going to vote, so then we receive a lower participation rates. We have tried to fix this problem by amending just 2 years ago the election cycle, so that municipal elections and parliamentary elections there is always 2 years in between them. So we have tried to fix this problem by that. But still, if we look at this year, we now have next Sunday elections to the Parliament, and the 26th of May elections to the European Parliament. So there will be just a month in between, and at the same time our parliamentary parties need to pursue government negotiations, and this is a problem. But Finland cannot alone decide on the schedule of the European Parliament, so we can not fix that in an easy way. But I would say that combined elections, they have the disadvantage of combined elections is of course that the election, that the message of the different elections might get mixed. For example, municipal elections, if we would have them at the same time as parliamentary elections, probably the municipal local issues would gain less attention. But the good thing, on the other hand, is that we see with combined elections that usually electoral participation is higher. We have one example, for example, when Finland joined the European Union, our first European parliamentary elections was at the same time as the municipal elections, and the electoral participation was way higher than ever since in these elections. That's a good question. There is no easy way to boost electoral participation. If we look at Finnish democracy, we are scoring, as I said, we are scoring well on democracy indexes because we have very profound participation rights and election rights and so forth. But the problem is if people do not vote. And we have, as the Ministry of Justice, established campaigns directed towards different groups, for example, migrants, youth, and other groups that vote to a lesser degree than others. For example, we provide information now in about the 20 most spoken languages in Finland. We provide information on elections for disabled, for example, people with hearing aid or that people who are blind, and we also provide now information in easy understandable format, both on the internet, both in video format as well as we published booklets where you see how you actually vote, and we have made some cooperation with YouTube stars in order to attract young people, in order for them to receive the message, because it's a channel that young people follow a lot. And then it's of course important to have this cooperation with the NGOs, because they actually target and see the real people on the street, which we of course as a ministry has a hard time thing to do. And of course we also publish on TV. We have sort of ads where we say why it's important to vote. Secondly, I think it's important to see that we have created the citizen initiative and other new channels of participation, and we of course hope that if people start to use them, it also spills over in the long run in a higher electoral participation as people get interested towards politics. In Finland, if we consider Finnish democracy in a comparative perspective, if we look at international studies and so forth, our system seems to function fairly well. If we, for example, look at the Freedom House Index, which is one of the great comparative studies on democracy, Finland scores first in the world on that index, and our elections are also considered the second most reliable in the world. So we can say that our democracy in that sense is doing very well. One problem that we have seen in all Western European countries and also in Finland is that participation among young people has become lesser than in previous decades, and we have tried to do now during the two last government terms to do different things in order to get young people to be involved in society, because we think it's important. If we look at electoral participation among young people, it's much lower than among middle-aged and older people, and especially young people without any education, any further education. And here we look at especially young men. We see very low electoral participation, and that we consider, of course, a problem. In a way, a problem for our democracy. What we have tried to do is to introduce new participation channels for young people. For example, we amended the municipal law, and youth councils became mandatory. So every municipality in Finland has to establish a youth council where young people can participate in. In Finland, the municipalities has a very strong role, because 2/3 of all our social services, like education and healthcare, is taken care of by the municipalities. Also, our constitution, starting from our constitution, says that it's a duty of the administration to provide people with adequate participation opportunities. This came in the constitution when it was amended in the year 2000, and I think this has been a very important feature, because it also considers child and youth participation. Other channels of increasing youth participation is that we have introduced a specific electronic channel, youth forum on the internet, where young people can make their own initiatives and claims, and where the municipalities and the government answers their questions and try to take into consideration what their claims or interests are. And we have financed, the state finances NGOs working in the field with the aim of increasing youth participation, and except for elections where the age limit is 18, as well as the citizen initiative, almost all other participation channels are open also for people under the age of 18. So I think that's important to remember. Participation rates among young people is much lower than among middle-aged and older people. And I guess this is virtually what has happened in all Western European countries during recent years or recent decades, and especially those who are not in education and are unemployed. These young people, they are those who do not vote, and they do not participate otherwise. And that's why we think that it's important to focus also on the work of NGOs, and the NGOs has a very important role in Finland. We have about 104,000 registered NGOs in Finland, and that's a huge amount compared to the population of 5.4 million people. And the state provides funding for NGOs, approximately 1.5 billion euros a year, which comes from the lottery, our lottery company. The state lottery, we have a state monopoly in lottery, and they provide money for that. And some of this goes to especially to projects which aim is to enhance youth participation. That's true. The citizen initiative system was introduced. We had the constitution was amended, and a specific citizen law on citizen initiatives was introduced in 2012. And the idea of this was that citizens would have a possibility to directly issue an initiative to the Finnish parliament. So it was sort of an introduction of a more direct form of democracy. Citizen initiatives, citizens can give an initiative to introduce new legislation, to abolish an existing law or amendments to an existing law. And the idea behind the citizen initiative is actually that the parliament deals with citizen initiatives in the same manner as they deals with government bills. So the government's law proposals are dealt with in parliament in a similar manner as citizen initiatives. It requires 50,000 signatures in order to reach the threshold for going to parliament. And what we can say about the citizen initiatives is that it has been hugely popular since its introduction. So far, 25 initiatives has gone to parliament, of which 2 has been accepted by the parliament, 1 directly and 1 with amendments. And secondly, some of the other initiatives has resulted in that the parliament has issued or the parliament has required the government to start law drafting or policy drafting in some fields which the citizen initiative has required. The citizen initiatives has also raised huge public debate about many issues, and the new TV, radio and newspapers has written quite a lot about citizen initiative, about the initiatives. So eventually, although the parliament would have abolished an initiative, it still has received quite a lot of public attention and public discussion. We have approximately 1.5 to 3 million visits on our citizen initiative webpage on a yearly basis, which is a lot considering the Finnish population. And some of the initiatives has actually reached 100,000 signature is less in just one day. So it has been a way of attracting attention to new political issues. One positive side of the citizen initiative, if we look at we made a review about the citizen initiative and how it works, is that over 80% of Finnish people think that the citizen initiative system has made the Finnish democracy working better than before. And what is especially nice to see is that especially young people use the citizen initiative even more than older people, and also unemployed people use it to the same amount as people who are employed. And these are the groups that usually stay outside politics and do not, for example, vote. So we hope that this would lead in the end to a more higher electoral participation in the long run. One of the good features of the citizen initiative is, of course, that you can collect it both on paper and on the internet. I would say that a vast majority of all signatures is collected on the internet, in the service provided by the Ministry of Justice. And if we look at statistics, how people end up on the citizen initiative page, we see that sharing these initiatives on social media, which is possible directly from this page, that's one channel where a lot of people gets to know about them. The second thing is when media writes about citizen initiatives, and we directly see a boost in the statistics how many visitors the pages have. I think that candidate selectors can be good in the sense that if we look at studies, especially young people are very interested in them. They use candidate selectors quite a lot, and I think this can raise interest towards political issues. But I wouldn't take candidate selectors too seriously, because many of the candidates try to answer quite close to the questions usually have a scale from 1 to 4 or 1 to 5. 5, and many of the candidates try to answer quite close to the center, because then they know that they receive actually quite a lot of people's attention, because people in Finland tend to have quite sort of modest views on many issues, and you know that if you're too extreme in some case, you don't receive so many hits. So in that sense, I wouldn't rely too much on that. And secondly, the candidate selectors, by testing and changing your answers on a few questions, it might totally get different candidates. So I think they are nice. They give a good view of the candidates, but still I would not personally select my candidate only based on a candidate selector. Shortly, we introduced postal voting or voting by mail in these elections, to parliamentary elections, for the first time. And the idea behind that is that Finnish people living abroad can vote by mail. And the reason for introducing postal voting is that generally Finnish people living abroad or staying abroad for a longer term of time, they can vote at Finnish embassies. But due to, for example, economic cuts in the foreign administration, we don't have the embassies the amount of embassies in different countries have been reduced, and which means that it is very difficult for Finnish people living abroad to actually vote, because they have to travel for quite a long distance. And we know that election participation among Finnish people living abroad is only around 10%, so it's very low compared to other groups. But now, the first time, you can you can sign up for postal voting, and you get the voting material at your home abroad and do it via mail. And we will evaluate this system after the elections and see how it worked, and did it have any effect on the actual electoral participation among those people staying or living abroad. Yeah, the security issue it's of course a very big issue when you don't vote at the actual polling station, but we will be monitoring it closely, and it has some security thresholds. For example, when you are ordering the postal voting materials, and then you need also to have signatures from other people who guarantee that you're the person who actually cast the vote. But we will of course closely monitor how it works.